I'm Ria Flanagan. I am here with the Happiness Playbook series. Today, I just wanted to talk to you guys about boundaries and how they protect us and what life is like when we don't even realize we're not setting boundaries. So one of the ways that we do that is not speaking up for ourselves in a situation, not noticing when something doesn't feel right and saying, hey, that doesn't feel right to me. When you feel like, oh, maybe, I feel like I've been taken advantage of, like, did you set a boundary? Did you ask for your wants and needs? So just ways to subtly just start noticing in your life, like, where am I not setting boundaries? Where could my life improve, right? Because boundaries are self-care. When we set a boundary, we're taking care of ourselves, and that is not selfish. That is important, because otherwise we can burn out. We can end up having resentments. Things can really go south if we're not setting boundaries. So one of my favorite books that also incorporates talking about boundaries and relationships is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So within my book are a lot of other suggestions for a lot of other books, a lot of shout outs to people that helped me grow. And so that I also want to share that with you. The four agreements that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So when I think about doing my best, I just want to say something about this, right? It doesn't mean going 120% until I burn out, right? Our best changes every day. So, today, if I had a good sleep and I'm feeling good about everything, maybe my best is a little different than it was yesterday. If I didn't get enough sleep, my daughter woke me up in the middle of the night, or I'm sick, or maybe I didn't get lunch because I was running and I just didn't make it to lunch. So just knowing that, like, our best changes, and that's okay. But just knowing that I did the best that I could in that situation, that's enough. And setting boundaries is having self-esteem, because I'm enough. I deserve to be able to set boundaries. My best is enough. So also looking at how that taps into self-esteem, and really going back to those four agreements and thinking about, like, not taking things personally. If somebody sets boundaries for themselves, that's them taking care of themselves. Good for them. Like, we have to also respect others' boundaries. So one thing to think about is, like really visualizing your boundary around you. So if you're to take a moment, and this is my chapter here I have up on boundaries in my book, and so it goes through, self-care isn't selfish, and it talks about this, but I'm going to separate that for a second and just kind of show you some tools and some ways to start noticing, okay, here's a boundary around me, and, like, just really feel it and visualize it. Does it have a color, a shape? Is it strong? And maybe in some situations we have to have stronger boundaries. Right? So if we're going into a job interview or feeling nervous, maybe our boundaries are a little thicker. Maybe they're made of steel, or maybe our boundaries are a little different depending on, if I'm not feeling well, maybe I have to have bigger boundaries to protect myself. But really visualizing that boundary, right? And just visualizing that, like, this is mine. This protects me from the outside world. Okay. Just, like, closing your eyes, take a few minutes, get a feel for it. Maybe it has a color. I like to think of it as like impenetrable bubble that I can see through and hear through, but anything that comes up to it has to stop. It's stopped by the impenetrable bubble. Okay. And then I can kind of look at it and see if, like, is that something that applies to me, or is it really about somebody else? Because a lot of times people are reacting. It's not about you, right? So that boundary creates that space. So we don't take everything everybody says in, because that would be too much. It would be overwhelming. And then think about this internal boundary. And this is closer. And this is the boundary that protects others from our stuff, right? Like, if we had a bad day, if we're having a crisis, keeping that internal boundary so we're not raging on somebody, blaming somebody, shifting that negative energy that we're dealing with on somebody. And so really also being aware, like, when I come to work, okay, like, I'm not going to put my stuff on my clients, or when I go home, not putting, a hard day on my family. And, like, what do I need to do to deal with some of that energy? Maybe it's frustration, maybe it's sadness, whatever it is, and finding internal processes, which I have in my book for you to all check into and process and play with and see if they're right for you. But first, noting that we have this boundary, to protect us from others, and this internal boundary, right, to protect others from, like, what's going on with us. So we're not just going to lash out. So just noticing, what does that boundary feel like? And sometimes that boundary has to be bigger. It's like, oh, I'm going through a lot. Maybe I have to, like, push an appointment back, or tell a friend, like, I have to resolve this with you later, or whatever it is, because I'm going through a lot right now, and I don't want to, maybe project some of that onto you. So having that internal awareness and going, okay, I'm going to have to shift that appointment or reschedule that or ask for some time and space right now, and really taking care of ourselves. So it's so important. Boundaries are huge. We weren't always taught the best boundaries or modeled the best boundaries growing up. So it's definitely something that we want to work on and start identifying, when did I not have boundaries today? Where did I need to speak up? Where could I have maybe put an extra layer of protection around myself, and so that I was able to be in my adult self, and containing myself, and being appropriate and respectful, also asking for wants and needs. Sometimes a boundary is no, N-O, period. No explanation, just I'm not able to do that. No, I'm sorry. Or no. Sometimes it's one word. That's not right for me. A few words. But again, we don't always even have to have an explanation, because it's okay. In fact, it's imperative that we set boundaries, right? To have healthy relationships, because if I'm always doing for everybody, and then I just feel burnt out, resentful, then I'm not going to feel appreciated. But that's my responsibility to say when I need to say no, to say no. So just really thinking about boundaries in different ways, really giving an image to your boundaries can help. Noticing when people violate our boundaries a lot. And so when we start setting more boundaries, some people may be irritated by that. They may not like it. They may have been taking advantage of the fact that you weren't setting boundaries. So starting to notice how are people shifting in my life as I set boundaries? What looks different? And really noticing, right, the people that respect our boundaries, right? It's just really noticing, okay. And maybe it's a period of adjustment where people you're different, you're changing, you're asking for your wants and needs. Well, the people that really love you should be that's so great. It sounds like you're really taking care of yourself, right? So just noticing those shifts as you start to self-care, as you start to really practice ways of respecting yourself and valuing yourself, because that's what boundaries is, right? I'm loving myself. Sometimes we're learning how to love ourselves. So it's I'm going to act as if I really love myself. What would I do in this situation? Or what would I want somebody I love to do in this situation? I'm going to do it, even if it's uncomfortable, because that's the other thing. Starting to set boundaries when we haven't been setting them in areas of our life, it's awkward. I always say it's like learning to play a musical instrument for the first time. And it sounds sort of weird and it feels weird, and maybe we wouldn't feel bad that we're studying them at first. But then just notice, right? Was that actually what I needed? I guess I don't need to feel bad. Why was I feeling bad? Was I feeling like I have to cater to everybody else and make everybody else happy at my expense, where I'm not happy? And that's where we start to look at, where can I raise some awareness and some mindfulness and that inner observer to start going, what would I like to be different? Do I need more time and space for me? What does that look like? And then I can communicate that. Sometimes that's setting boundaries, communicating, hey, I'm not going to be able to be there at that time. I'm only going to be able to be there for this long, because then I have to go do something. I have to go work out, or I have to do my own thing. So not sacrificing so much that you're putting yourself in a state of burnout. Boundaries are beautiful. They are something, the more you model it, better for your family members. And as you set boundaries, you're teaching other people how to treat you, and also that, maybe they'd like that for themselves too. So where can you create more space for yourself, nourish your wants and needs by setting boundaries? And so thank you for joining me today. There's much more to be said around boundaries. Check out my book for some tools. Happiness is an Inside Job Playbook, which is launching very soon. And so I've been doing this podcast to give you guys some free tips and tools. Hopefully you'll get my book when it comes out, and I'll keep you updated on when it's coming. So thank you for joining me today, and I will be back.